So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's an honor and delight to be joining you here from Hanoi. We're here in the Green 1 UN House, where UNDP Vietnam country office is located, and honored and delighted to be sharing with you our country office experience of supporting the government of Vietnam in applying the multidimensional poverty approach. And you may know that Vietnam is among the pioneering countries in applying multidimensional poverty. And this started in 2015, where the government of Vietnam issued its first national multidimensional poverty measurement. And it was looking at applying this measurement to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 1 on poverty, to eliminate poverty in all dimensions and all its forms everywhere. We were very pleased to see in the UNDP report in 2018 that Vietnam was highlighted as having one of the most successful approaches for using the multidimensional poverty as a tool for targeting, for poverty monitoring, and for policy development. And now, increasingly, the government has also extended multidimensional poverty to help identify the poor at communal levels. In the context, and more recently, in the context of COVID-19, both the significant impact it's had and the social and economic impacts, there have been a number of important lessons that we've learned in applying the multidimensional poverty approach here in Vietnam. And here, the government is really to be commended for its advocacy and approach, and UNDP was honored and delighted to partner very closely in analytical work that led to 2 to 3 important outcomes that we would like to share with you. The first is the revision of the multidimensional poverty line for 2021 to 2025. And this revision has resulted in the doubling of income for both rural and urban poor. And this effectively extends the eligibility of 7.6 million more people in Vietnam for Government of Vietnam multidimensional poverty support. Now, what we found is that when we undertook a rapid impact assessment of COVID-19 on the livelihoods of vulnerable populations here in Vietnam and their businesses, that the income dimension of Human Development Index was one of the most severely impacted. So this outcome has really a significant bearing on the benefits that will be received by a much broader remit of people than before, and much greater levels of vulnerability already included. Secondly, in the context of COVID-19, was the addition of new indicators and thresholds for the non-income measures of deprivation. And these included, for example, nutrition, employment, and skills that are now needed in the new context of COVID-19. These are also more in line with the government of Vietnam's aspirations to become a middle-income country and the kinds of expectations there are from the population and in terms of meeting the non-income dimensions of deprivation. We'd also add that one of the key elements of these new measures is that the government is focusing on measuring outputs and outcomes rather than inputs into people's living standards. So this is an extremely important shift, and it's looking at the outcome and outputs to people's lives in terms of deprivation, measuring deprivation, rather than inputs, and very important shift and distinction in mindset. Thirdly, and this was very important too in the revisions, is looking at the digitalization of the MDP monitoring and management. So with UNDP support, the government of Vietnam has embarked on digital tools and procedures for identifying multidimensionally poor households for the first time. And these allow 3 features that are particularly important. The first one is an online platform for multidimensionally poor households to self-e-register and e-verify. The second is the creation of sex disaggregated e-database for multidimensionally poor households for more cost-effective and transparent management and delivery of monitoring of the MDP policy and program support. And thirdly is the digitalization of poor households identification. And these exercises have given the opportunity for poor households to self-identify and will eventually bring more transparency and accountability to the process, and more importantly, update the poor household list that is crucial for the government of Vietnam to provide timely support to those who are most left behind. Next, I would highlight that using the new poverty lines have been for three differentiated purposes, and this is very important. One is for poverty monitoring, the second is for poverty targeting, and the third is for policy development. So as we know, the MDP measurement has popularly been used for MDP monitoring, but honestly, that's the easy part. The MDP measurements in Vietnam have been used also consistently for the three differentiated purposes and poverty monitoring, targeting, and policy development. So let me just give you a few examples, and these are becoming increasingly important as we move forward. The first is in estimating a time series of poverty statistics, and this we've done by going back as far as possible to ensure the consistency and objectivity in monitoring poverty. Secondly, and at the same time, poverty monitoring will need to provide more timely information for policymakers to design and implement timely policy actions. Thirdly, as evidenced by the implementation of the government of Vietnam social protection support package, many people became newly poor and near poor households as a result of COVID-19, and they were not identified in a timely way and thus not eligible for support. So this digitalization process is absolutely key for the identification, for keeping timely and updated statistics, and for adding transparency and accountability to the system, as well as more efficiency in the delivery of the support as needed. So, and lastly, I should mention as well that also digitalization of multidimensionally poor and near poor households is actually very important to eliminate human errors and avoid inclusion and exclusion errors, as opposed to using the income measurement. So such digitalization has proved to be extremely helpful, and we're very pleased that this is now moving to scale. Turning to UNDP support and future directions, at regional and global level, UNDP continues, and as always, we're ready to share our experience with experimenting the results and lessons learned from the multidimensional poverty development and applications with any countries that are interested, and especially in the three areas that have been highlighted: targeting, poverty targeting, monitoring, and policy implication. I would just give a few examples. Since 2019, our office has been working very closely in supporting MOLISA, that's the Ministry of Labor and Invalids and Social Affairs here in Vietnam, to develop a multidimensional poverty hub for the country, which has the key and important role in promoting MDP measurements in Vietnam. This includes updating MDP measurement and consistent application, and also connecting Vietnam's MDP work with the international network and sharing of good practices of Vietnam's work on MDP application, as well as learning from others. At the national level, during the COVID-19 pandemic, UNDP has also been supporting the government of Vietnam in reforming and digitalizing the social assistance system, including the recent government of Vietnam's social protection package to respond to COVID-19. And that's been one of the very important and exciting applications here in Vietnam. When we look to, in terms of the support onto the social protection dimension and application, we've been looking at the digitalization of the process of identification, verification, and management of MDP poor households. And this has been undertaken also in very close collaboration with the Government Statistics Office and the Ministry of Planning and Investment, which are responsible for poverty monitoring and poverty statistics. So just to highlight that UNDP in Vietnam is also cooperating closely with the Government Statistics Office, the Planning Office, to enhance Vietnam's capacity in poverty monitoring, both in terms of applying the national MDP measurements for the period of 2021 to 2025, and speeding up the analysis and release of poverty statistics that are based on international methods to inform timely policy formulation and implementation. Secondly, and I would highlight as well that we're working very closely, and in this context with the Ministry of Ethnic Minority Affairs, and in the context of Vietnam, the remaining poverty, or 95% of the extreme poor, are located with groups that are identified in Vietnam as ethnic minorities. So working with that ministry, together with the Australian government, we're looking at supporting an ecosystem for innovation. And UNDP is partnering with Australia in this context to provide technical support to accelerating multidimensional poverty reduction and the socioeconomic development in ethnic minority areas over the next 15-year period. The key aims of this partnership is to develop an ecosystem that enables all actors to generate, experiment with, innovative and integrated solutions for accelerating the reduction of multidimensional poverty in ethnic minority areas and groups. The project also supports the most vulnerable groups, especially ethnic minority women, to equally participate in and benefit from the country's socioeconomic development and resilient recovery in the fast-changing COVID-19 context. So this is to give you a little bit of the idea of how there's been this important evolution within Vietnam from introducing the National Multidimensional Poverty Index for its application in terms of multidimensional poverty policy and practice, and critically for looking at the measurement of multidimensional poverty, the income dimensions, so that a much broader remit of vulnerable people can be covered through the government's own programs, as well as to looking at innovative ways in terms of moving forward and accelerating action to reduce multidimensional poverty. So I hope these have been, you found these useful and interesting, and you'll be hearing now from our government partners, as well as from our colleagues who've been working directly on the multidimensional poverty work. And we look forward to learning also from other countries on how you too have applied multidimensional poverty in your country context.
Chúng tôi cũng đã phối hợp với UNDP tổ chức tổng kết đánh giá lại cái hiệu quả triển khai cái chuẩn nghèo tiếp cận đa chiều giai đoạn trước, để trên cơ sở đó là nghiên cứu cái kinh nghiệm quốc tế và đánh giá cái điều kiện thực tiễn của Việt Nam để đề xuất chính phủ ban hành một cái nghị định mới, đó là Nghị định 07 quy định về chuẩn nghèo đa chiều giai đoạn 2021 và 2025. Và một trong những cái đặc điểm nổi bật đó là chuẩn nghèo đa chiều mới có tiêu chí thu nhập bằng chuẩn mức sống tối thiểu của dân cư trong cái tính tại thời điểm là năm 2 tháng 1 năm 2021. Và cái thứ hai nữa là chuẩn nghèo đa chiều mới thì đã có quy định về cái mức độ thiếu hụt những cái dịch vụ xã hội cơ bản. Đấy. Trong đó là có những cái nhóm dịch vụ xã hội cơ bản như là giáo dục, là y tế, rồi nước sạch, rồi vệ sinh, nhà ở, thông tin và việc làm. Thì cái cách áp dụng chuẩn nghèo đa chiều mới của Việt Nam này có khác với lại cái cách áp dụng của một số quốc gia trên thế giới. Đó là chúng tôi áp dụng chuẩn nghèo đa chiều này để xác định ai là người nghèo ở Việt Nam. Tức là xác định cái đối tượng là người hộ nghèo, hộ cận nghèo này trên cả những cái tiêu chí về thu nhập và cả tiêu chí cái thiếu hụt những mức độ thiếu hụt những dịch vụ xã hội cơ bản. Và bên cạnh đó thì chúng tôi cũng áp dụng cái chuẩn nghèo đa chiều này để theo dõi, để đo lường, giám sát, đánh giá cái việc thực hiện cái giảm nghèo ở Việt Nam. Đấy. Và bên cạnh đó, đây cũng là cái cơ sở để chúng tôi nghiên cứu, xây dựng và tổ chức thực hiện những cái chính sách giảm nghèo theo cái hướng là cái chính sách giảm nghèo sẽ góp phần giải quyết những cái thiếu hụt của người nghèo. Đấy. Đây cũng là cái cơ sở để chúng tôi là xây dựng những cái chính sách về giảm nghèo, cũng là đồng thời là cái cơ sở để chúng tôi xây dựng chương trình mục tiêu quốc gia giảm nghèo và an sinh xã hội bền vững giai đoạn 2021 và 2025.
The national poverty line is a combined income and 5 social service dimensions, including education, healthcare, housing, sanitary, and information access with 10 indicators. It is unchanged poverty line for the whole period of 5 years. So now we need to revise the multi-dimensional poverty line for the period 2021 and 2025. A fifth income line need to be revised by the price index. In addition, dimension of social service also need to revise to suitable of the development of socio-economic context. In the next period, income dimension threshold is adjusted to equal 100% of minimum living standard compared with 70% in the past. And it increased 2.2 times by absolute value. And it will cover more multi-dimensional poor. We think that it is necessary to maintain income dimension in low and middle income country because of its flexibility, especially in context of fast-changing world by COVID-19. For the social service, we add one more dimension on employment with 2 indicators. We think this is very important to set up a foundation to use this dimension replace for income in the future. Besides that, we change one indicator for healthcare to nutrition of children, make it similar with global multidimensional poverty indicator. 3 thresholds of education and information access indicators are adjusted higher in the past. And one is very important that the poor household is now defined by both under minimum income and deprived 3 indicators of social service. And it reached closer to the Ankai and Foster approach. If one household deprived less than 3 indicators, they are not defined as poor. Multidimensional poverty is used in Vietnam for various purposes, and we hope UNDP and OFI will continue to support Vietnam and other countries to develop multidimensional poverty approach in the future, and also support for collection data to estimate multi-poverty index in the future.